Before we continue, do you understand the seriousness of what you've done?
With respect, Your Honor, I've had nothing wrong. People are just jealous.
Why did you think you could use a child's inheritance like your personal wallet?
Because I kept that house running, not her.
Is this your signature on the transfer?
Yes, but you're twisting everything. I had my reasons.
Thursday afternoons in Providence Municipal Court carry a strange kind of weight. It's not the kind that comes from paperwork or routine hearings, but something heavier, quieter, almost atmospheric. The ceiling fans stir the air lazily, the old wooden benches creak under shifting bodies, and sunlight filters through the tall windows in long, tired stripes that fall across the polished floor. People talk in low murmurs, attorneys shuffle papers, and somewhere in the room, a nervous heel taps an uneven rhythm against the tile. It's the kind of afternoon where emotions feel sharper, where truths have a way of rising to the surface whether anyone is ready for them or not. At exactly 2:18 p.m., the bailiff steps forward, clearing his throat before announcing the next case. The entire room seems to pause as the words echo off the walls. Estate matter. Adams Family Trust. Petition filed by minor Sophie Adams regarding the alleged misuse of trust funds by guardian Victoria Hale. The name alone sends a soft ripple through the courtroom, the kind that makes strangers glance at one another without speaking. Misuse of trust funds. A minor child. A guardian accused. And presiding over it all, the steady presence of Judge Frank Caprio, known for his patience, his fairness, and his unwillingness to be swayed by arrogance. But today, arrogance is about to walk straight through those double doors wearing designer heels. Before we get deeper into this story, make sure you subscribe to Real Judge Stories and leave a comment below telling us what justice means to you. This helps us bring more real courtroom moments and powerful human stories to viewers around the world. Judge Caprio adjusts his glasses as he settles into his chair, but there's something different in the air today, something even he can feel. The calm authority he carries isn't enough to soften the tension hanging between the walls. The entire courtroom seems to inhale all at once, as if anticipating that whatever is about to unfold won't be simple or routine. Even the fluorescent lights above seem dimmer, humming softly like they're bracing for impact. People lean forward slightly, some out of curiosity, others out of quiet concern. A row of college students taking notes for a legal studies class sits unusually still, pens poised but unmoving. An elderly couple in the back whispers to each other, then falls silent as the courtroom door groans open. The clicking of expensive heels echoes sharply, too sharply for a place built on humility and truth. A small gust of cold air enters with it, though it's unclear whether it comes from outside or simply from the attitude of the person stepping inside. Judge Caprio glances up, and for the briefest moment, his steady expression tightens, just slightly before he smooths it over. Whatever he was expecting from this case, the tone has shifted before a single word has been spoken. The courtroom recognizes it too. Conversations die instantly, replaced by the low electric hum of anticipation. Everyone knows that some hearings stay within the confines of legal paperwork. But others? Others take on a life of their own. And this one, just from the air alone, feels like it's about to change the temperature of the entire room. Victoria Hale enters the courtroom the way someone might enter a private boutique, like the room was built for her, and everyone inside should feel privileged just to witness her arrival. She doesn't walk, she glides, wrapped in a confident chill that makes the temperature seem to drop with every step. The first thing people notice is the coat, soft cream wool tailored so sharply it could cut the air. The second is the handbag swinging from her wrist, a glossy burgundy designer piece the size of a small suitcase, the kind only sold in boutiques where prices aren't written on tags. But it's the sunglasses that really turn heads. Oversized, jet-black lenses that hide not only her eyes, but any trace of sincerity behind them. She keeps them on long after crossing the threshold, as if the courtroom lights are somehow unworthy of touching her face. Her jewelry glitters beneath the fluorescent bulbs, stacked bracelets, a set of diamond-studded rings, a necklace with stones large enough to catch Judge Caprio's raised eyebrows even from the bench. Her hair is fresh from a salon blowout, each strand perfectly in place, each highlight reflecting the kind of upkeep that doesn't come cheap. But what people notice most isn't the money she's wrapped in. It's the expression. A permanent, subtle sneer sits on her lips. The kind that says she's already bored, already inconvenienced, already convinced she's going to win. She scans the room like she's selecting an appetizer, not facing allegations involving a child's inheritance. She doesn't acknowledge the gallery. She doesn't acknowledge Sophie. She walks straight to the defendant's table, drops her handbag onto the polished wood with an entitled thud and finally, slowly, lowers her sunglasses. The arrogance beneath them is blinding. Sophie Adams sits in the third row, small enough and quiet enough that most people wouldn't have noticed her unless they were looking. 16 years old, but in this moment she looks younger, like a kid clinging to the edges of a storm she didn't ask to walk into. Her jeans are faded, her sweater stretched from too many washes, and her sneakers look like they've carried her through more than just school hallways. Her hands tremble ever so slightly as she clutches a thin blue folder to her chest. It's bent at the corners, worn at the spine, and packed with documents she's read so many times she could recite them from memory. Her father's handwriting peeks from the top of a folded page, and she covers it instinctively, as if the world might steal even that from her. Her eyes, dark, steady and rimmed with red, lift just long enough to watch Victoria take her seat at the defendant's table. There's no hatred in Sophie's expression, no glare or spark of rebellion. Just a deep, aching hurt. The kind that roots itself silently and grows in shadows. Beside her sits her grandmother, Eleanor Adams, her hand resting protectively on Sophie's shoulder. Eleanor's posture carries the weight of someone who has weathered years of hardship, but her grip is firm, unwavering, one of the few steady things Sophie seems to have left. As Victoria lowers her sunglasses, a smirk curling at the edges of her mouth, Sophie lowers her gaze again. Not out of fear but out of exhaustion. This isn't a battle she ever wanted. But today for the first time she's fighting back. Judge Caprio studies the case file for a moment, flipping through the pages with deliberate care. The courtroom is so silent that even the soft rustle of paper feels loud. When he finally looks up, his eyes settle on Victoria Hale, the only person in the room who seems completely unbothered by the gravity of what's about to unfold. "Ms. Hale," he begins, his tone measured, professional, calm. "You are the legal guardian of minor Sophie Adams, and you're here today in response to her petition regarding suspected misuse of trust funds left by her late father. Is that correct?" Victoria lets out a slow sigh, the dramatic kind reserved for people who believe their time is more important than everyone else's. She leans back slightly in her chair, crossing her legs with a sharp, practiced elegance. "Yes, Your Honor," she says, dragging out the words. "But I'll be honest, I'm confused about why all this is necessary. I've been managing everything just fine. Sophie is a teenager. Teenagers exaggerate. You know how dramatic they can be." Judge Caprio doesn't nod. He doesn't smile. His expression remains perfectly neutral. "Ms. Hale," he says, "this is not a discussion about typical teenage behavior. This is a legal inquiry into whether you've handled a minor's inheritance appropriately." Victoria raises an eyebrow as if mildly amused. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I'm sure you'll see I've done nothing wrong. I've kept the household running. I've paid the bills. I've made sure Sophie has a roof over her head. I'm the one doing all the hard work here." A faint murmur ripples through the gallery. Judge Caprio notices it. He also notices the thin thread of arrogance woven through every word she speaks. And for the first time today he leans forward. The real conversation has begun. Before Victoria can add another dismissive remark, the guardian ad litem, attorney Marissa Cole, rises from her seat. She carries a slim binder pressed firmly against her side, her expression focused, steady, nothing like Victoria's polished indifference. "Your Honor," she begins, her voice clear enough to cut through the tension. "Sophie's father established the Adams Family Trust 5 years before his passing. It contains very specific instructions regarding the use of the funds. Those instructions were designed to protect Sophie's future, her education, her stability, her long-term security." Victoria's posture stiffens, but she still attempts an unimpressed smirk. Marissa opens the binder, revealing a page with highlighted lines and handwritten notes. "In the past 14 months, she continues, Ms. Hale has withdrawn approximately $62,400 from Sophie's trust account. These withdrawals exceed what would be considered reasonable for day-to-day care, especially given the resources already available in the household." The quiet in the courtroom sharpens. Judge Caprio adjusts his glasses and glances at Sophie, who sits motionless, her fingers tightening around the blue folder in her lap. Victoria speaks again, her tone dripping with impatience. "As I said, Your Honor, raising a teenager isn't cheap. Groceries, utilities, school needs, it all adds up." Marissa's eyes narrow just slightly. Groceries and utilities do not typically include luxury purchases and unexplained electronic transfers. That line lands like a stone thrown into still water. Several heads lift. Even Victoria blinks. Judge Caprio folds his hands on the bench. "Miss Cole," he says calmly, "show me what you've found." And with that, the first real crack in Victoria Hale's facade begins to show. Attorney Marissa Cole steps closer to the bench, offering Judge Caprio a neatly tabbed stack of documents. The papers make a soft thud as they land before him, but the weight of what they contain is anything but soft. He begins flipping through them, his brow tightening with every turn of the page. These are the detailed expenditures from the Adams Family Trust, Marissa explains, her tone steady. Each withdrawal is listed with corresponding receipts and transaction notes, where available. Judge Caprio nods, eyes scanning line after line. Marissa continues, over the past 14 months, Ms. Hale has made multiple large withdrawals categorized as household expenses. However, the purchases themselves tell a very different story. She pulls out a summary sheet and reads aloud. First, 3 luxury resort stays totaling over $9,000, all booked under Ms. Hale's name. Dates correspond with Sophie being left with neighbors or her grandmother for extended weekends. A murmur ripples through the gallery. Second, a series of high-end boutique purchases, designer clothing and accessories totaling $7,800. Victoria shifts visibly now, folding her arms tighter. Third, an extensive list of spa and cosmetic clinic charges, facials, hair treatments, lash procedures, amounting to $4,200. Judge Caprio looks up slowly, his expression unreadable. Marissa presses on. Fourth, several large online shopping orders, electronics, decor and jewelry, adding another $6,300. The tension thickens. Even the ceiling fans seem to hum louder. None of these, Marissa concludes, align with the trust's intended purpose: Sophie's education, her stability, or her future security. Victoria finally speaks, her voice sharpened with indignation. Your Honor, maintaining a home requires upkeep. I needed to present myself well for work. And those resort trips? Mental health breaks. I needed time to recover after my husband passed. Judge Caprio closes the file. His next words are calm, dangerously calm. Miss Hale, I'm not seeing maintenance here. I'm seeing indulgence. Marissa Cole isn't finished, not even close. She retrieves another folder, thinner but somehow more severe, the kind of file that changes the entire temperature of a courtroom. Your Honor, she says, the previous documents cover visible spending, transactions that appeared directly on the trust account. What we found next required subpoenas and cross-checking multiple financial institutions. Victoria's jaw tightens. Marissa opens the folder. 3 months after Mr. Adams passed away, Ms. Hale opened a separate savings account at Brighton Financial Bank. The account is registered solely under her name, but it uses Sophie's trust information and social security number. The courtroom goes still, so still that even Victoria stops blinking. Marissa continues with precision. Over the next 12 months, Ms. Hale transferred $28,000 from Sophie's trust into this personal account. These transfers were labeled as short-term reallocations, a term with no legal basis and no authorization in the trust documents. Judge Caprio leans forward. Ms. Cole, is Sophie listed anywhere as an account holder? No, Your Honor. She has no legal access to the account. She wasn't even aware it existed. A low hiss of disbelief moves through the gallery. Marissa flips to another page. Additionally, Ms. Hale used trust funds to pay for a leased luxury sedan, totaling $11,400 in payments. The car is registered solely in her name. Victoria finally breaks, her voice trembling with anger rather than fear. That car was necessary transportation. Sophie benefited from it too. Marissa responds with a calmness that cuts deeper than anger ever could. According to our records, Sophie has never been listed as an authorized driver. She doesn't even have access to the keys. Judge Caprio exhales slowly, the kind of exhale that precedes something far heavier. What else, Ms. Cole? And everyone knows, there is more. Judge Caprio sets the documents aside and turns his attention toward the third row, where Sophie sits frozen, her hand still wrapped around the blue folder that has become her shield. His voice softens, losing the judicial edge and taking on something more human. Sophie, he says gently, would you come forward, please? Her grandmother squeezes her shoulder before she rises. It takes Sophie a moment to steady her legs. She walks like someone pushing through water, each step heavy with memories she never wanted to say out loud. When she reaches the witness stand, her fingers grip the railing as though letting go would make her collapse. Judge Caprio speaks with care. Take your time. And tell me what's been happening at home. Sophie nods, swallowing hard. Her voice begins small, barely a whisper. After my dad passed, things changed. Victoria kept saying the house was too expensive, that everything cost too much because of me. She looks down, blinking rapidly. She said I should be grateful she didn't send me to live somewhere else. A few people in the gallery shift uncomfortably. She stopped talking about my college plans. My dad always told me the trust would help me go anywhere I wanted, but Victoria said there wasn't enough money. She said I wasn't, Sophie choked slightly. She said I wasn't the college type. That I should start preparing to work instead. Judge Caprio's expression darkens just slightly. Sophie exhales shakily. She started taking trips without me. She bought new things every week. When I asked why we couldn't afford my school fees or books, she told me I was selfish. Her voice breaks fully now. I didn't want to believe her, but I thought maybe she was right. Maybe I really was a burden. A soft gasp ripples through the room. Sophie wipes her tears, but they keep falling. I just want to know if my dad's wishes still matter. Before Sophie can step away, her grandmother, Eleanor Adams, rises slowly from her seat. Age has stiffened her joints, but not her resolve. Her voice, when she speaks, carries decades of quiet strength. Your Honor, she says, may I speak? I was there for most of what Sophie just described. Judge Caprio nods gently. You may proceed, Mrs. Adams. Eleanor walks to the front, placing a steadying hand on Sophie's back before turning to face the judge. Her eyes glisten not with fear but with a controlled, righteous fury. After my son passed, Sophie came to my apartment more times than I can count, crying, confused, scared. Victoria told her she was too expensive. That she should stop dreaming like a spoiled child. Eleanor's voice trembles on those words, but not with weakness. My son worked overtime, double shifts, even skipped holidays just to make sure Sophie would always have opportunities he never had. A murmur spreads across the gallery. Eleanor continues. One morning, Sophie showed up at my door during school hours. She could barely speak. Victoria had told her there wasn't enough money left for college, that she should get used to disappointment. She pauses, breathing through the anger. But I knew it wasn't true. My son showed me those trust papers himself. He told me everything was set. Everything. Her gaze shifts to Victoria, cold and unflinching. And yet this woman, she says sharply, spent that child's future on vacations, clothes, and things a grieving teenager should never have to watch. The courtroom hangs in silence. Judge Caprio watches Eleanor with quiet respect. Then he turns his attention back to Victoria Hale. And the storm in his eyes finally begins to form. Victoria Hale has been shifting in her seat for the past several minutes, first subtle, then increasingly restless. The gallery's murmurs, the judge's silence, Sophie's tears, all of it presses against her carefully manufactured composure like cracks forming in glass. When Judge Caprio turns toward her, calmly asking, Miss Hale, do you wish to respond to these statements? Something inside her finally shatters. She shoots to her feet. Her chair screeches backward, startling several people. This is ridiculous, she snaps, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. All of you, every single one of you, are blowing this out of proportion. Sophie is exaggerating. Eleanor is manipulating her. And this whole thing, she gestures wildly at the documents on the judge's bench. This whole thing is just an attack on me. Judge Caprio's face remains still, carved from stone. Victoria continues louder now. You're all ignoring the fact that I've been the one holding everything together since my husband died. I'm the one paying the bills, maintaining the house, making sure Sophie isn't out on the streets. And what do I get in return? She points a trembling, angry finger at Sophie. A spoiled, ungrateful child who thinks she deserves everything handed to her. The courtroom reacts instantly, gasps, whispers, disbelief. Sophie flinches. Eleanor surges forward before catching herself, fury burning in her eyes. Victoria presses on, voice cracking with rage. I sacrificed my life for her. And she repays me by dragging me into court? She doesn't deserve that money. She doesn't deserve anything. Judge Caprio raises a single hand. And the entire courtroom falls silent. He has heard enough. Judge Caprio remains standing even after the courtroom stills, his hand lowered, his expression transformed into something far heavier than simple disapproval. The man known for empathy and patience now carries a silence so sharp it cuts through the room without a single raised word. Miss Hale, he begins quietly, too quietly, for the past 30 minutes I've listened to testimony, reviewed evidence, and observed your behavior. He pauses, letting the weight settle. And I am struck by one overwhelming truth. He leans forward. You have shown this court more arrogance in half an hour than most people exhibit in a lifetime. Victoria stiffens, but he continues before she can speak. You were entrusted, Miss Hale, with the care of a grieving child. A child who lost her father, her foundation, her sense of security. And rather than protect her, rather than honor the wishes of the man you claim to have loved, you chose to elevate your comfort, your vanity, your lifestyle. He lifts the financial documents. These vacations. These luxury purchases. These secret accounts. They are not mistakes. They are not misunderstandings. They are choices. Repeated choices. The courtroom hangs on every syllable. You told this court that Sophie should be grateful. Grateful, he repeats, his tone hardening, while you spent her inheritance on spa treatments, designer clothing, and personal getaways. You told her she wasn't the college type. You told her she was a burden. He turns toward Sophie, his expression softening for only a moment. This young woman carries more grace than you have shown in any part of this proceeding. Then he straightens, voice ringing through the room. Effective immediately, I am removing you, Ms. Hale, as Sophie Adams' guardian. You will no longer have any access, direct or indirect, to her trust funds or financial accounts. Custody is granted to her grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor Adams. Victoria's face drains of color. And, Judge Caprio adds, I am ordering a full repayment of all misused funds, with interest. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the State Attorney's Office for investigation into fraud, financial exploitation, and identity misuse. The room explodes in whispers. Judge Caprio lifts his gavel. This court will not tolerate the theft of a child's future. The gavel slams. The reality check lands. For a moment after the gavel falls, the courtroom feels unreal, like the very air is holding its breath. Then, slowly, the tension begins to melt away, replaced by something gentler. Something almost fragile. Sophie stands frozen at the witness stand, her eyes wide, glistening, unsure whether she's allowed to exhale. Her grandmother reaches her first. Eleanor wraps her arms around the trembling teenager, pulling her close in a way that feels both protective and liberating. Sophie buries her face in her grandmother's shoulder, and the sob that escapes her is soft, but it carries months, maybe years, of fear and confusion. Around them, the gallery watches with quiet respect. No one speaks. No one moves unnecessarily. Even the students in the back row lower their pens, absorbing a moment that carries more truth than any lecture. Victoria sinks back into her chair, stunned into silence, her earlier fury drained into something pale and hollow. The designer coat, the diamonds, the perfect hair, none of it holds power anymore. Not in this room. Not in front of this judge. Judge Caprio removes his glasses and sets them gently on the bench. There's a softness in his expression now, an exhaustion perhaps, but also a kind of peace. Take care of her, he tells Eleanor quietly. I will, she whispers back. And for the first time in a long while, Sophie believes it. In every courtroom, cases come and go, some forgotten as quickly as they arrive, others lingering only in paperwork and archived recordings. But every now and then, a moment unfolds that reminds everyone present why justice matters. Not the kind written in legal codes, but the kind that protects the vulnerable, restores dignity, and honors the people who can no longer speak for themselves. Sophie Adams walked into court carrying fear, uncertainty, and the weight of a future she thought had slipped away. She walked out with something far greater, truth on her side, protection at her back, and a judge who refused to let arrogance overshadow compassion. And in the quiet that follows justice, healing finally begins.